Hi everyone, my name is Daniela Ventura and I am a senior in psychology and a Magner scholar. My Discover poster today is titled Reward Learning and its Relationship to Depression in Adolescents with Epilepsy. So we know that epilepsy is one of the most common neurological disorders in youth, and it is often associated with depression, which is known to happen 5 times greater in those with epilepsy than the general population. And a cardinal symptom of depression is anhedonia, which is lack of motivation, lack of pleasure, and lack of interest, which stops people from wanting to seek rewarding stimuli. And reward processing is postulated to underlie anhedonia, and it is frequently disrupted in people with depression, specifically youth, but is not really known how this is affected in those with epilepsy. So, reward processing or reward learning is our ability to learn and take in feedback and how we make decisions for the future. We also looked at resilience because it has been negatively associated with depression, but it's not known what it looks like in epilepsy. So, for our hypotheses, we hypothesized that youth with epilepsy would have poor reward processing compared to those typically developing, and that there would be a negative correlation between reward processing and levels of anhedonia and depression, and that depression and anhedonia would be negatively correlated with resilience. So our participants were recruited at Cook's Children's. They were between ages 10 to 19, and there was 25 typically developing and 23 epilepsy. We utilized self-report assessments such as depression, which was the patient health questionnaire. For anhedonia, we used the dimensional anhedonia scale, and for resilience, it was the Connor-Davison's resilience scale. We utilized this task called simple reaction time task, which showed the participants the star on the screen, and they had to hit a key as fast as they could. The star would appear on the screen, and the times would vary between appearances of the star. So their goal was just, again, to respond as quickly as they could. We also used the probabilistic reward task, the PRT. The participants had to differentiate between a small mouth and a short mouth. There were 2 blocks of 100 trials, and it was assessing reward learning using uneven positive reinforcement. So the participants would win money if they were correct, but not every correct response yielded rewarding feedback. And unknown to the participants, one of the two mouthlings was randomly assigned a rich condition, which meant it would give them more rewarding feedback than the lean condition. So for our results, reward learning was intact, but slower in youth with epilepsy. So we know that they still learned. Psychomotor speed too, it was equivalent to those typically developing. They did do slightly slower when giving a more challenging task, which was the SRT. And for our surprising results, we found that greater task accuracy was associated with higher depression symptoms. So, literature often says that the more depressed you are, the lower you'll do in cognitive tasks such as the PRT, but our research findings showed otherwise. And depression and resilience, the higher the depression, the lower the resilience was, just like we had hypothesized. So for strengths, some of our strengths are that this is one of the first studies to look at reward learning in epilepsy. We use both clinical and cognitive measures, and this also gives us insight on what mental health in epilepsy looks like. And limitations, we had a small sample, which is not generalizable to the epilepsy population. And we concluded that reward learning in epilepsy was equivalent to typically developing, although they did perform slower than their controls. They still learned, and greater task accuracy was associated with greater depression symptoms. We think it might be because they have a greater concern with being right or wrong. And higher depression symptoms was associated with lower resilience. For future directions, it is important to replicate these findings to improve treatment and clinical outcomes for youth with epilepsy. Thank you.